here we are again, finding ourselves staring into the middle distance, where all things coalesce. What am I doing here? Not really sure. I'd really like to focus all of my efforts on compiling informatics regarding wavelength theory. However, it does not seem like... I'm not sure if my mental state is correct. So as much as I'd like to... Dang it. I'm making lots of noise today. As much as I'd like to lay more groundwork for the discussion of wavelength theory, I think maybe some sort of reflection is in order. And since this has more or less become a diary and like a place where I can just say whatever I feel like, I think unconsciously wavelength theory will still be interlaced in what I'm trying to say anyway. And I just kind of want to let things out. Not really sure what things, where to begin, etc. But I don't know. Maybe if I could express this in the form of a story rather than just direct information. This coffee is too hot. So, once upon a time, I think I need to re-examine the entirety of my life up until this point, and that might help me to further understand myself, further understand where I'm coming from, and further develop, get over the so-called mental blockades that have been put up along the way, because then I'll be able to understand where they came from, and theoretically then how to get past them. First off, let me thank everyone who's been an active participant in my life. Each one of you fulfills an integral role, whether or not you realize it. Each of you are an anchoring point used to orient myself as a human being. I am able to define myself based off of the mirrors of yourselves. The persons, the not me's, are the ways that, I'm largely able to define who I am in terms of what I'm not versus what I could be, I suppose. Generally speaking, I think most people have this problem, but I specifically have a problem where I find it difficult to see what I am, because everyone, myself included, is their own worst enemy. I tend to lie to myself in terms of my desires, where I've been, who I am, and why I do the things that I do. Because there is comfort in lies, and reality and truth are harsh, difficult places that I had spent a good long while attempting to avoid by literally burying myself as best I could in anything that I could. However, due to recent developments, I've been forcing myself to come to terms with where I've been, who I've been, what I've done. All in all, I've done nothing particularly damning, I suppose, else I'd probably be in a worse state than I am. For if I had done things that were particularly damning, people would have the rights, the reasons, and the ability to have condemned me by now. I guess maybe I've just been lucky, or maybe there has been some modicum of truth to the fact that I'm a decent person somewhere deep down. It's just hard to internalize how other people see me when I don't see me that way. But once again, this is a problem that I feel all of humanity has to contend with at some point or another, if not their entire lives. It seems to me that there are some people who simply exist irregardless of those around them. And part of me says that that is an idyllic way to live, where nothing that happens really impacts you because you've been so hardened by the things that occurred in your life. But part of me says that that type of shell is exactly the thing that I was trying to avoid, or am trying to avoid currently, by finally associating and intermingling with my internal consistency, my headcanon. I'm finally facing who I am. And I think that that is a definite type of strength. Being able to see who you are, accept who you are. Not necessarily be proud of who you are per se, unless you were to the point where you were in absolute debauchery and you are now functional. I would like to claim pride in who I am, but that's too simplistic of a viewpoint. I instead would prefer to aim upwards. I would like to be better than I am, rather than content in what I've accomplished. And contentment is an easy thing to fall back into for me. It's a real problem. And so I've more or less developed what one could consider anxiety, because I never have the ability to relax. I don't know how to relax because, well, it never feels correct. It feels like I'm wasting time. It feels like relaxation is not conducive to advancement. And I don't. But at the same time, I think it is a necessary evil to advancement. Taking regular break periods is as much a necessity towards advancement as the actual act of advancing. But I always feel that if I relax too much, I will lose sight of the things that are important to me, and I'll be hit by inspiration and either forget it or not act upon it, which is why I've instead started carrying a notebook with me everywhere, because that way, if inspiration strikes in the middle of nowhere, and I can't otherwise stop what I'm doing necessarily, I can at least try and pencil down something, some modicum of the idea, so that I may use it as a reference point to remember later, hopefully. I'm trying to tie all the things in my life together. Not necessarily in a neat package, but just together. Perhaps I should go back as far as I can remember, and then from there try and get witness accounts as to other things that had happened for the things that I don't remember, so that I can build a foundational purpose for being. A foundation with which upon I can rebuild. For you see, this house that I had built is rotten, or was rotten, and then I burned it to the ground, and now I have to rebuild the foundation before I can start working upon the mansion that I desire. For I ultimately desire not only to further myself, but to aid in the furthering of those who have been and are near and dear to me. All the personas, all the people, I want to give back. And they say that the best way to give back is to simply be successful. But I disagree. I feel that there is a further step even after that. For if I am successful, I should then be able to not only influence others to be successful as well, but to then help them in places that they didn't realize they needed help, in ways that they were unable to see for themselves, that their development was lacking. I can be quite a influential individual. I can convince most people to do the things that I suggest. I can convince most people that I am correct, even when I don't know that I am. And I guess that this would be something that you would assume is akin to manipulation. It had been used for manipulation in the past. It had been used for greedy ends. It had been used to self-aggrandize. I had wanted people to believe in a me that I didn't believe in, so that I could see myself the way that they saw me then. And that's a horrific thing to do to somebody. It wasn't fair to any of the people involved, myself included. It was a power play, an ego trip, a fantasy. All of these things. Why? Because I've been afraid of who I am. I'm afraid that the people who do claim to care about me wouldn't be able to recognize me, acknowledge me, understand who I really am. Because I think deep down, every individual has a monster inside them. And those who fail to acknowledge that monster end up falling prey to it. I think that I've been a bad person, but that doesn't mean that I am a bad person. As long as I'm willing to change, to grow, to improve, to help. Not all bad things are bad things. Some things that happen are taken as happening to you, where the world is not quite that simplistic. The world happens around you. You allow things to happen to you. And the people that take things as happening to them when they are just around them tend to have a much narrower view of the world and not be able to grow as far. And I was the opposite. Instead of saying that anything happened to me, everything around me was simply a product of some supernatural phenomena, and I had merely been lucky, where I have actually been able to seize my fate in my hands. I had been unwilling, and instead thrusted upon some unforeseen force. Strange thing to do, really, considering I wasn't a religious person. But that's a very religious mindset. The mindset that there is some smarter, stronger, better being out there than you are or could ever be. I think that that truth is resonant in humanity. There will always be people better than you at the thing that you can do the best. But someday, you could surpass them, because time is a weird modulation. Time is a thing that is hard to internalize for most people, and by the time you finally got a grasp on time, you usually don't have much of it left. I've been lucky and thankful, but I need to start using the tools at my advantage rather than... I feel guilty for things that have been good for me because other people don't have them, when instead I need to use them as building blocks to become stronger, to become better, to honor the memories, to honor those who are no longer with us, to honor the people that are with us and need to be in a better place, to honor the people that have given their entire lives, their entire being, their entire ethos to helping others because they believe in a future, but they don't believe in themselves. I think every person has the ability to do great things, but greatness is a hard thing to measure. Greatness is something that is largely subjective. I see greatness in such small things now. Monumental tasks in the minute. You see a person who had been paralyzed for 20 years walk again. Some would claim that's an act of God, others an immense amount of willpower. I think that truly miraculous things are based on the eye of the beholder. Every day is a miracle if you look hard enough. Every day alive. There are things around us that we've taken for granted for so long. These gifts bestowed upon us and yet not noticed, because perspective is hard to acknowledge when it's all you've ever known is one way. And then you need to look a different way and realize that you don't know nearly as much as you think you know. That is my truth. Every time I get comfortable, every time I think I know something, I learn something new, and I've proven wrong. So I've stopped trying to think that I know things, and instead started asking more and more questions, and asked for verification of things that I thought that I knew, and done what is referred to as a redundancy check as often as possible, because I need to double check myself. Everyone says don't doubt myself. That's not fair. I am as much of a limited human as anyone else. I'm not a book. I'm not a machine. I'm a human. I have limits. I have weakness. I have boundaries. I have things that I cannot do, and I have things that I can do, but I tell myself I can't. I have places to be. I have things to do. I have a person to become, and I have a truth to follow. And I have a life ahead of me that I've been trying to avoid because I've been afraid of change, as most people are. How do you embrace something that you can't conceptualize? You either go in with no hopes and just kind of see what happens. You hope for the best, and perhaps it happens. But an open mind, the ability to adapt, are prized things in humanity. And I want to I want something that is nearly impossible for me to define. But I think I'm on the right path.